Are you self-employed? Don't think you need business insurance? Think again. Business insurance from Zensurance is a no-brainer for every business owner because it provides peace of mind. A lot can go wrong. A fire, stolen equipment, or an unhappy customer suing you. That's why you need insurance. Don't let the "I'm too small for this" mindset hold you back from protecting yourself. Zensurance provides customized business insurance policies starting at just $19 per month. Visit Zensurance.com today and buy your policy online in just a few minutes. Zensurance, mind your business.
Frequency Podcast Network. Stories that matter, podcasts that resonate.
You know, if there is one thing that I learned this week, it's that no matter how weird you think this world is, it can always get weirder in a hurry. But there is bad weird. The things are going to be terribly difficult now weird. And then there are stories like this one.
Guelph police say there have been at least 7 of what they call large-scale thefts of butter in the last 10 months, including 2 this month from North End grocery stores.
Yes, butter thieves are on the prowl across Ontario. And we're not talking about a few bars of butter here. Oh no, it's thousands of dollars of that sweet, sweet yellow gold. And it's not just a couple of heists, either. They keep happening for some reason. These crooks can't be caught. So, why butter? Why is this so widespread? Who's behind it? Where does the butter go once it's been stolen? Is the stolen butter in the pastry that you're eating right now? I'm Jordan Heath Rawlings. This is The Big Story. Mark Colley is a general assignment reporter for the Toronto Star and currently the man on the butter beat. Hello, Mark.
Hi, Jordan.
Maybe you can start with just when did you or somebody else at the Star realize that this wasn't a one-off butter heist? This was a trend that was happening in more places and we need to investigate what's going on here.
Yeah. So, I mean, the place where this all starts is Guelph. Guelph police put out a press release in October that mentions that, $930 some odd worth of butter have been stolen from this grocery store. And it's kind of a run-of-the-mill press release other than the fact that there's butter being stolen, and that's weird. But the thing that gets really weird is the longer you read, you come across this paragraph that tells you that there have been 7 large-scale butter thefts in Guelph over the past year. And that's a really strange thing to read. And so obviously a couple places have picked up on this. We came across it in some local media. And like everyone else who hears this story, you kind of stop and go, okay, why the heck are people stealing butter? Where is this butter going? How much is $1,000 worth of butter? How far does $1,000 worth of butter go? There's a multitude of questions that emerge from it. And we had to jump on it.
Yeah, well, I'm going to ask you a bunch of those questions. But to start, you mentioned 7 in Guelph. I know there's been some elsewhere too. What do we know about the scale of this? Give us a sense of that.
Right. So the number actually now in Guelph is 9. It was 7 when they put out that press release, and then they got a couple more reports. So we're talking about 9 large-scale butter thefts in Guelph. We've also had one in Brantford, which is about an hour south of Guelph, and that was $1,200 worth of butter that was stolen about a week ago in a grocery store there. So it's certainly not an isolated issue. And Guelph police, they use the word large scale, but I already tossed out some of those numbers. It's generally speaking between $900 and $1,000 worth of butter each time. So, I mean, there's been some thefts that are less. There was one that was $300, one that was $500. There's been one that was more. Actually, the first theft that was reported to police was more than $1,000 worth of butter. And of course, you've got that Brantford theft. That's about $1,200. But generally speaking, we're talking $900 to $1,000 each time. And there's been 9 separate thefts in Guelph and then 1 since in Brantford that we've heard about.
Okay, since you mentioned it, I will ask, what does $900 or $1,000 worth of butter look like? I'm picturing it in sticks here.
Yeah. So, I mean, Please talk about how the fact that the thieves have taken just cases of butter. So like within each case, you've got individual sticks like you would buy from the grocery store put together. Those are all put on a shelf in the grocery store. And then thieves have just walked out with a whole case of these. So in one case, it was 3 entire cases of butter. And I mean, you can do the math on it at home. It's about $7.50 right now for a pound of butter. So, if you're stealing $750 worth of butter, that's 100 pounds of butter. And so if we're stealing $1,000, it's a little bit more than that. So regardless, it's a lot of butter.
You mentioned they would just walk out with them. What do we know about how exactly these heists occur? Like, how does one make off with 100+ pounds of butter?
By the sounds of it, it's not all that difficult. A lot of these thefts are pretty brazen. So what we do know, the typical pattern of the thefts in Guelph, according to Guelph police, is that there's 2 men who enter the store separately. They meet up inside. They toss some butter in a cart or in grocery bags or whatever, and then they just leave out a door. In some cases, it's as brazen as walking out the front door without paying for this butter. In some other cases, they use an emergency exit. In one, they used a receiving door. But yeah, it doesn't seem particularly complex or elaborate. It is walking into a store, grabbing a whole load of butter, and walking out. Some of the other commonalities between these, I mean, the suspect descriptions in Guelph, at least, are pretty similar. It's usually men who are between 5'6" and 5'8". They're described by police as brown-skinned. Sometimes they're wearing a baseball cap. In one case, one of the men had a bandaged leg. So there are sort of these similarities in the way the suspects are described, in the way the cases happen. But right now, Guelph police are saying that they don't know whether they're connected or not.
So this is the money question, I guess. Why is it butter? Surely there are things that are less heavy and awkward that are worth more to carry out of a store.
Right. Yeah. And not just that, but easier to store.
Right.
Butter does go bad eventually. It has to be refrigerated. And so, yeah, the question of why would you steal butter is kind of one of the money questions here, one of many money questions here. There's a couple of factors at play. I mean, the first most obvious thing that anyone who has been buying butter over the last couple of years can say is that butter is expensive. I mean, like everything in our country, things have gone up in price over the past few years, and butter is no exception to that. And so butter is on that list of things that are expensive commodities now. But another factor at play with relation to cost is that regardless of inflation or anything else, butter is just an expensive item to begin with. It's more expensive than other dairy products because the demand for milk fat tends to be higher than the demand for milk protein, and that makes butter more expensive than other dairy products. And then I think there's kind of a third thing at play that you can boil all of this down to when you're asking why is someone stealing butter, or with any object, like why is someone stealing beef from a grocery store or any strange object that you may come across. And the answer really is just that there's a market for it. People wouldn't be stealing butter if people weren't willing to pay for butter on the other end of this transaction. And so in some ways, it's no different than any other black market. There is a market for butter, clearly. And so people are going to steal butter because people will pay for butter.
Here's another question then, and you mentioned this in your article when you're speaking to people who use a lot of butter, I guess, is why does the type of butter here matter when we're trying to divine a motive for, regardless of the money aspect, what is still a rather strange heist?
So I will readily admit I am not a baker. I'm not a butter expert to begin with. I use margarine in the morning on my toast and not actual butter. So I was kind of out of my depth going into this. So like you say, I called up a bakery in Guelph, Polestar Hearth Bakery. It's run by a guy named Jesse. And when I asked him, why would someone be stealing butter? How do I track this down? The question he posed to me was, what type of butter are they stealing? And as it turns out, it could be an important question and an important answer to find to figure out what's going on here. So unsalted butter. That's what you would use in baking. It gives you a lot of control over the recipe. And so Jesse from Polestar, he was saying if they're stealing unsalted butter, he would guess that this butter is going to bakeries. It's going for industrial use to be used in recipes and baked into bread or croissants or cookies or whatever it may be. Salted butter, on the other hand, that's what you would typically have on your counter to butter toast if you're not a margarine user like I am.
Right.
And so if they're stealing salted butter, Jesse was guessing that this butter is probably going to individual buyers. So it's going to people like you and me who might be buying butter and sticking it on the counter and buttering toast. Unfortunately, the answer to Jesse's question is a little bit less illuminating. I asked Guelph police, what type of butter are they stealing? And the answer was that they're stealing both. They're stealing salted and unsalted, seemingly indiscriminately. And they're also stealing ghee, which is a type of butter used in Indian cooking. So unfortunately, the answer of what type of butter doesn't actually lead us anywhere in this case.
Be honest, when was the last time you thought about your current business insurance policy? If your existing business insurance policy is renewing on autopilot each year without checking out Zensurance, you're probably spending more than you need. That's why you need to switch to low-cost coverage from Zensurance before your policy renews this year. Zensurance does all the heavy lifting to find a policy, covering only what you need, and policies start at only $19 per month. So if your policy is renewing soon, go to Zensurance.com and buy your policy online in just a few minutes. Zensurance, mind your business.
I want to ask you again about logistics, because you mentioned the logistics of the thieves getting out of the store with this kind of stuff. You also mentioned that, butter needs to be kept cold. What would someone do with that butter immediately after stealing it if we're talking about 100 pounds of butter? Like, what kind of timeline are we talking about? Where do you put it?
So this part of the investigation, we don't really know. Guelph police haven't shared much past the fact that this butter is being stolen, how it's being stolen, and the fact that they suspect it's going to some sort of black market. But obviously, we know the realities of butter. I mean, you have to refrigerate it. Theoretically, someone could be freezing it and offloading it slowly to, as we talk about individual buyers, you could be driving it directly to a business somewhere in Guelph or in, Windsor or in Sarnia or in Toronto or in Ottawa. You could be driving it directly to a business and selling it right to them, and it gets baked that same day into a loaf of bread. Like, we really don't know what happens immediately after. What we do know is that after these people leave the store, the butter tends to be, in the few cases we have details on this, loaded into a car and driven off. But we talk about the quantity of butter. So Jesse from Polestar, he uses about 100 pounds of butter a week. And as we talked about, a pound of butter going for $7.50 right now. So $750 worth of butter a week. So that gives you an idea of how far this butter would go and who could be using it. But yeah, we really don't know many of the logistics that are happening immediately after that butter leaves the store.
You mentioned that police won't say if this is connected, but that some of the suspects at least appear to share similarities. Has anybody been caught? Has anybody been charged? What do we know about any of the alleged crooks?
Yeah, so 3 people have been arrested in these thefts, and all 3 of those arrests came from the very first reported theft. That was, as I mentioned, December of last year. It was 8 hours to Christmas Day when, at a grocery store in Guelph, there was 2 men who walked out the front door, loaded butter into a vehicle, and drove off. As Guelph police tell this story, the grocery store reported it to police. Police were proactively deployed to another grocery store in the area that they thought may also be a target. And lo and behold, when they arrived, they found a similar vehicle also being loaded up with butter. And at that point, they arrested the 3 men who were involved. It was a 25-year-old, a 29-year-old, a 40-year-old. All of them were from Brampton. One of them provided a false name to police. They were all charged with theft under $5,000. And then they were all released with a pending court date. That date came, and that court date went, and these 3 men were nowhere to be found. And according to Guelph police, there are now warrants out for their arrest. So we don't actually really know anything from these 3 suspects who have been identified to Guelph police. They probably would have gotten answers to a lot of the questions we're talking about now. Why steal butter? Where does it go? What are the logistics of this? But unfortunately, those suspects have missed their court date. They are now on the run and they are wanted by Guelph police.
Do we know if they might still be out there stealing butter, or are these different people?
Yeah, we don't know. So Guelph police say they're treating each of these thefts as distinct events. They can't really say, at least publicly right now, whether they are connected or not. But I mean, certainly if you're sitting on the outside looking in and speculating, some of the things add up. Some of the suspect descriptions are similar. The way this butter is stolen is similar. And then you can also ask yourself the question, just how many people out there are stealing butter on the regular?
Mm-hmm.
Like, how big could this group be? But no, that's pure speculation. We don't know whether this is connected in any way, whether the suspects are the same or different, or whether they're part of the same group or not.
One of the last things that I want to ask you about is just the optics of where this butter goes into whom. And as I was reading your story, I kind of had these images of the old mob movies like Goodfellas, you know, where organized crime is kind of moving stuff into the back of a restaurant and people are buying it at a huge discount out front. And like, is that happening at a bakery somewhere?
I mean, yeah, it could be going to a bakery. You know, we all know kind of the economic pressures that we're all feeling in Canada right now. Restaurants, bakeries, a lot of industries are feeling the crunch of inflation just as much as everyone. And so you can imagine a situation where, you know, a bakery, their margins may be thin and they might be thinking to themselves like, look, if I can get my butter for just a little bit cheaper every month, then maybe I can pay my bills at the end of the month and I can stay open for another month. So you can kind of see this situation where, yes, it makes sense to buy black market butter, but it also may be going to individuals. I mean, Guelph police readily point to Facebook Marketplace. If you look up Facebook Marketplace right now, you can probably find a few listings for butter on there, salted, unsalted, G. And so this may be someone who's stealing this butter and flipping it on Facebook Marketplace to individuals, people like you and me, who are buying your butter and, you know, under a lot of the same conditions, again, looking for a lot of these household products that they can get for cheaper because wallets are a little bit tighter right now. So you can see sort of multiple avenues and ways that this butter could be flipped and where it might be going.
Last question, because you've mentioned it a few times, you know that everything is more expensive these days and everybody's feeling the pinch. Is it only butter? Have we started to see any other household items or sort of items that might be a little too expensive for people to afford in a regular budget being stolen at similar scale and resold or whatever?
Yes, we definitely have. If you talk to the Retail Council of Canada, they say that retail theft has become a multi-billion-dollar problem in Canada. Retail theft happens all over the place. So that's, I mean, shoplifting is the most obvious example of that, but there are more organized instances, and that's what appears to be happening right now in Guelph and what is happening elsewhere as well. So I spoke to a food economist at University of Guelph, and what he said is that thefts like these typically target low volume, high cost items. So that's something that isn't going to take up a ton of space, something you might be able to slip into a backpack or your pocket or down your pants and is going to get you a lot of money, right? It's pricey. So for food, a common target is beef. It's something that matches that profile of low volume. And yet if you're stealing a steak, it might be quite a pricey grocery item. But it's not just food, of course. There's other stuff being stolen. So the Retail Council of Canada, they say that baby goods are a common target, diapers, formula, razor blades are another one. Again, if you think small but expensive, razor blades fit that perfectly. Generally, anything you see extra security measures on in a grocery store or in a store at large, it's probably a frequent target. But it's not just normal things like this, right? We can kind of understand why someone might be stealing razor blades or some of these things. There are a lot of weird thefts that happen. So $70,000 worth of pistachios was stolen near Waterloo, Ontario. $8,000 worth of live lobster was stolen in New Brunswick over the summer. Even butter has been stolen at scales, 200 times larger than what we're seeing in Guelph. There's $200,000 worth of butter stolen in Trenton, Ontario in 2021.
Wow.
The thing about these strange thefts and these large-scale thefts is that it is, for the most part, cargo theft. So that's someone stealing something, a truckload of something from a truck yard before it makes it to the grocery store. What's kind of unique about the butter thefts in Guelph is that it's happening off a grocery shelf, and it is happening, 9 times over the past year.
So we might see the butter locked up like the razor blades.
It may be headed that way, yes.
Thanks again for doing this, Mark.
Thanks so much, Jordan.
Mark Colley, reporting for the Toronto Star. That was the big story. For more from us, you can head to thebigstorypodcast.ca. You can also shoot us feedback anytime to let us know what you think or to suggest an episode. After a week like this, I would appreciate more suggestions like the Butter Bandits. Makes me feel good heading into the weekend. Hopefully, it does the same for you. You can always find The Big Story in your favorite podcast player. If you haven't checked it out yet, you might want to check out Seeker, Seekr, where you can also find The Big Story and a whole bunch of other podcasts. And you can ask your smart speaker anytime, any place to play The Big Story podcast, and you'll find us there too. Joe Fish is the lead producer of The Big Story. Robin Simon is also a producer here. Matt Kesselman handles our sound design. Stephanie Phillips is our showrunner. Mary Jubrin is our audience development lead. Diana Kay is our manager of business development. I am Jordan Heath Rawlings, your host and executive producer. And together we are Frequency Podcast Network, a division of Rogers. And we will also have an episode of In This Economy for you on Saturday, an extra little treat, something happy on Sunday, and we'll be back with a fresh big story, probably not as fun as this one, but probably more newsworthy, on Monday. So we'll talk then.
Are you self-employed? Don't think you need business insurance? Think again. Business insurance from Zensurance is a no-brainer for every business owner because it provides peace of mind. A lot can go wrong. A fire, stolen equipment, or an unhappy customer suing you. That's why you need insurance. Don't let the "I'm too small for this" mindset hold you back from protecting yourself. Zensurance provides customized business insurance policies starting at just $19 per month. Visit Zensurance.com today and buy your policy online in just a few minutes. Zensurance, mind your business.